Alrighty, so this is a basic workshop on character development and character empathy in role-playing games. How to role-play, how that can benefit you, and we're going to specifically focus on the game Dungeons & Dragons. So, if there's background music, it's because part of Coyote Con, which is what this is for at Chandler Gilbert Community College, also has movies like WALL-E playing in other rooms around us. So that's always fun. But let's start with the basics. There are a variety of role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games. What this means is there's usually tabletop role-playing games are group storytelling. And they are a form of cooperative gaming rather than competitive gaming in most instances, where you work as a team to accomplish some sort of task or mission or goal set up either through a pre-built module or where one player plans or guides the larger picture of the game. In tabletop role-playing games, they would be called the Dungeon Master or the Game Master. So, knowing kind of those basics, everybody usually in tabletop role-playing games, you sit around a table. You don't necessarily need figurines or anything like that, but one player guides the story and the other players respond to what happens in the story in a form that is a team-built ongoing story, and often they're called campaigns. So there are a variety of different ways and styles and genres of campaign. It doesn't always have to be something in the Dungeons and Dragons realm, which would be medieval battles with swords and bows and arrows and magic and all that fun stuff. There are steampunk style campaigns. There are ones that do have dragons. There are ones that are set in the future. There are role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games built around like Star Wars and other themes. I've even seen people try and apply Pokemon or name your trademarked storyline for this sort of thing. So it can be fun. One of the reasons I like it most is, like I said, the collaborative nature, not the competitive nature of gaming. You can only play chess or blockist so many times with some people before either they get mad at you for winning or bored with you for losing. So in a game like this, it doesn't necessarily have to stop. The characters just keep growing with you as a player and as you all interact around the table. You can do these kinds of games with just one player, but the more common setup is somewhere between 3 and 6 players, 4 being the happy spot that most content is generated for, especially from Dungeons & Dragons and Wizards of the Coast. So, with that, that's a basic rundown of how tabletop role-playing games work. There can be a variety of ways to engage in this collaborative storytelling, and there are sometimes an overwhelming amount of resources or what seem like rule books. Just the Dungeon Master book alone can be a little overwhelming because it is a pretty thick thing. But this is supposed to be a quick start, or a reference guide. You do not have to know all the rules to play a game. You just have to know enough rules to keep playing and having fun. So there's also the Player's Handbook, and this has how to build a character, the different varieties in the basic form, basic rule set of D&D. And they've come out based on feedback over, I think, since 2013, 2014 with the 5th edition. They keep coming up with more and more content or alternate creature races or player races that you can play. So without getting into the weeds on that, let's start with the basics. If you're going to play this, you need at least someone who is trying to guide a story, and they play all the auxiliary characters, what are called NPCs or non-player characters, and that's the Dungeon Master. And so they may be following a particular campaign, like where did it go? Something like Horde of the Dragon Queen, where it is a set module with pre-built non-player characters, and the Dungeon Master can walk a set of players through a series of pre-built missions to save the world, or in this case, the Sword Coast is the world that it's built in. So one player has to be in charge of all this, of the interactions that the dungeon master is in charge of all the interactions with all the random people, or the people who would give missions, or the people who would provide support, or the bad guys. Whereas one to however other many players you have will then be interacting with this world. And so if you are a player, which is what this workshop's about, you want to know some of the basics of role-playing so that you can have fun and feel comfortable engaging in this collaborative storytelling as a place to start. So first, know that you don't have to do, there are all different ways you can do. So if you are trying to create a character, you can always just quick generate one from the internet. You can always, or you can spend a lot of time digging through manuals and trying to decide what race you are based on like 15 possibilities, what class you are. You know, are you gonna be fast? Are you gonna be beefy? Are you gonna be a magic user? Are you going to be someone, a paladin or cleric, where you're healing or praying or something like that as part of your story? Are you going to have some sort of otherworldly bond that maybe perhaps isn't divine? That can get into some interesting role play. But there's a lot of options when it comes to role play. What matters is that you have fun and the people at the table have fun. So if it's your first time, just pick one thing about the character you find interesting as you build it, and just try and think about what that character wants in life. And even if you pre-generated a character and used some of the pre-built materials to have a character's value set or alignment, and we don't have to know everything about those yet, but if a character has maybe a belief in protecting the little guy, or helping someone who's or pushing against bullies, you think of Steve Rogers before he was Captain America. He says, "I don't want to kill anybody. I just don't like bullies," right? So if that's his core, who we see him to be, his main value, then when he gets in a situation and he sees someone trying to use power to push someone around, whether it's a little lizard person being pushed around by a human, whether it's or whatever situation it is, whether it's a dog being picked on or a dragon dog being picked on by a larger creature, that character is going to feel compelled to step in. So knowing that value about the character, Dungeons and Dragons, or any role-playing game, allows you to begin walking into situations and saying, what would this character do? So let me give you the basics of how something could go. First, know that Dungeons and Dragons is a role-playing game, and it's about storytelling in worlds of swords and sorcery most of the time. It shares elements with childhood games of make-believe, because like those games, this sort of game is imaginative. It's about picturing the towering castle beneath the stormy night's sky and imagine how fantasy adventure might react to some of those challenges in life, right? When tension comes up, when conflict comes up, what do we do? What does your character do? They may not do what you as a person would do, but they are going to do something, or maybe part of their character is to intentionally do nothing. And then maybe they have a Spider-Man moment where it's like, with great power comes great responsibility. When you know, I like the one from Tom Holland, what is it? When you could have stopped something bad from happening and you don't, that's on you, right? That's the most recent Spider-Man version. So when your character might then go through some sort of transformation. So here's kind of how it works. I'm going to use language from, I've got D&D Beyond up here, so that's what I was reading from as far as an introduction to the game. I've also got the Player's Handbook, so I'll give you a little bit of basics from that. So in the Player's Handbook, as far as an introduction to the game, unlike a game of make-believe, D&D gives structure to the stories and a way of determining the consequences of the adventure's actions. Players roll dice to resolve whether their attacks hit or miss, or whether their adventurers can scale a cliff, roll away from the strike of a magical lightning bolt, or pull off some other dangerous task. So part of, if you think about how kids play, we have fun telling stories together. But if you ever had that moment growing up where one kid was like, and then I do this, and I do this, and you do that, and I do this, and then my guy beats your guy up. There's no real structure to that, and that can be fun for the person who's saying they're winning all the time. But what D&D does is it allows you to be in that immersive, imaginative realm while someone else guides whether something happens successfully or not. So it doesn't have to be rules heavy. It just provides a little structure to the imaginative play so that you feel like any consequences or rewards are appropriate given the context. So with that, here's basically what happens. When you're playing, there are 3 steps. The DM describes an environment. The DM describes an environment, the player then describes what they want to do in response to that environment, and the DM then narrates the results of the adventure or action. So, if the DM says, you awake in a strange, dark place. The air is moist with, the air is moist and foggy and cold. And you can feel the stone floor of a cave beneath your back. Your hands are bound by something you can't tell what just yet. What do? Right? So the DM sets the stage, usually, and I'll talk about this more in the DMing workshop, usually in a little bit of just a little snippet scene, so that the characters have something to react to. Some DMs tell long, elaborate descriptives, but that tends to slow down gameplay sometimes. So the DM provides a scene, the character then decides the player then decides what their character would do, and says, here's what my character wants to do. And the DM says, okay, make a check, make a roll your d20, roll some dice, see if, based on your character's skill set, if you can do that. So that's the basics of the game. And when you roll, if it's a high score or a low score, it's all just part of the game. You're telling a story. So while sometimes players want to succeed, it can be just as meaningful a part of their character development over time when they fail. The same way in real life, right? Failure isn't the end. Failure is usually the beginning to a long-term success. We'll call that the basics of the game. Now let's zoom in on characters a little bit. So when you're developing a character, there are ways to do a quick character, so you don't get bogged down in rules and you can just have something put together for you. So you can either go to a website like D&D Beyond, whose character builder can be kind of intense, or you can go to a website that I like to, if I'm just trying to put something together quick, and it is fastcharacter.com. And I don't even have to put in all of this information. I can decide, okay, I know I'm going to need a level 1 character because I'm just starting out, and I'm going to basically tell it to create all of this on its own. There's one thing I like to do if I'm playing a campaign. I'll say random as far as alignment goes, but no evil characters, and I'll tell you why in a moment. And I'm going to just tell it to display in a color character sheet portrait style. Yeah, I'll create this, and I don't have to think about anything. Let me make sure that that's coming through on the screen. Let me see if I can make it bigger for you. So, so there's some important things. If you were doing this at home, there are some things to note, right? So when you build a character, there are set scores. How strong you are, how fast you are, how smart you are, how wise you are, how good with people, and then how easy it is for you to get sick or to get worn out. So someone may be really strong, but have a really low, what's called constitution, which means they may be able to lift a car, but if you sneeze on them, they could die of the flu, which would be bad, or a common cold. So sometimes it can be interesting how you play those up. Someone could be really strong and really intelligent, but terrible with people, or not very fast. So all of those things may play into how you visualize the character. But on this character sheet, so there's a bunch of statistics based on attributes and all that. Don't stress that when you're first getting started. What matters most, though that can tell you a little bit about your character, if someone's really strong, you might imagine them with ripped muscles, or if they're strong for some other reason, you can decide. But what is important is either the alignment as a starting place, or things like traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. So in this case, this character that got randomly generated is a neutral good character, which says, I help others according to their needs and promote compassion above all else. So that might be so as a neutral good, that means maybe when they get into a fight with a character who is shown themselves to be evil, they're going to have compassion above all else, which means they're going to hope that that evil person returns around, gets redeemed somehow. And so they may, instead of killing, they may try and incapacitate or knock unconscious, which is something you can call out in the game with certain weapons. The other thing is, if I've got traits, I'm not as famous as told, or I was traumatized by, in this case, what's called an aberration, which is a fancy type of monster in D&D. So that means anytime this character comes up against aberrations, there might be some sort of problem, either excessive anger or excessive fear. So when you role play that, you have to think about, how is this different? So this person may be able to stand up against, say, a dragon completely confident, but because maybe they were traumatized, you can decide as a child or what that looks like in your head by an aberration, a ghost or some otherworldly type of thing, that when something like that comes in front of them, maybe they lock up, maybe they freeze. Maybe you ask the DM to let you make a Constitution saving throw or a wisdom check or something to see if your character freaks out and ends up in the fetal position on the floor in the middle of battle when this thing happens. Other things, the ideal, it doesn't, let's see, or a bond. Idolizes a famous hero and a flaw, never resists a pretty face. Now you as a character, now that's raw, that's generic, right? You as a player can decide what your character thinks is a pretty face. In this case, we have an Eladrin, which is an elf. But maybe this Eladrin-style elf thinks pretty faces are the face of ogres, goblins, hobgoblins, trolls. That would be interesting. So can't resist a pretty face. Maybe this character, anytime it runs into, let's see, did it make it a he or she? Does it say? It doesn't say. When this character runs into one of those that you've decided are the pretty faces for your character, the type of face they're attracted to, they immediately either get bashful or boastful or flirtatious, whatever it is. You can decide what that means for your character. And then the bond, idolizes a famous hero. Maybe the famous hero is actually a bad guy, right? Maybe modeling, this character modeled themselves after someone important, and as part of that process, like try to be the idealized version of the hero, and when they meet them in person, they're disappointed, or they end up realizing they've become better than the hero ever was. If you think, I don't know, what is it? Harry Potter and, is it Lockhart? Professor Lockhart, he goes through and he's really good with memory charms, but he doesn't do much of anything else. Makes Harry's bone all floppy, right? And he's basically a coward, and he steals other people's stories. So, there are a lot of people who idolize him, even Hermione, all that fun stuff. But ultimately, getting to know him, they become disappointed and disillusioned because he tries to kill them or tries to delete their memories, right? So these things can play out in the story in very different ways. What you want to think about as a player is, how are you going to embody that at the table in various situations, right? So it could be that you say, you come up against a situation that triggers your desire to promote compassion above all else. And maybe as a player you say something like, okay, seeing this situation, this shopkeeper's being harassed by these bullies, this gang or whatever of kobolds, which are little 3-foot-tall dragon folk, right? Then you see that, and you say, my character says, what would Professor Lockhart do in a situation like this? And then you go, and so my character does X, right? And gets in the way, or puts the kobolds to sleep with a sleep spell, or paralyzes one of them, or uses prestidigitation to make my voice louder so that I scare them away. Whatever it is, you are saying, how would my character respond to this scene, this situation? And to be able to do that, you have to think about what that character likes, dislikes, why they are the way they are, why they think the way they think, why they feel the way they feel. And all of that can come out and be something you draw from even a pre-made character like this. Or maybe you have a character in your head, someone you've always wanted to be, or maybe a character you always thought it'd be fun to play. Like you read it about, a lot of people will either try and create a character who's like themselves but with magic, or try and create a character who's like themselves but who's really strong. Other people will try and create a character based on their favorite book. You know, maybe they want to maybe they want to play Frodo or Aragorn, or maybe they want to play Rand al'Thor from Wheel of Time, or Hermione, or one of the Weasley twins, right? So they build a character after that, and then maybe they put a spin on it. So instead of it being a human Hermione, it's a tabaxi Hermione, which is basically a cat person, right? So there are a variety of options, but for players, if you're just starting, don't get overwhelmed by all the options. Focus, if all else fails, just pick one, pre-generate a character, and then just see what it gives you, and then try and play that character true to what's on the sheet, right? So if that character wants to be like their hero, idolizes a famous hero, but that hero is like a super strong hero, and they spend all their time, even though they're only average strength with a 10 and no bonus, but they're super fast. Maybe they spend time trying to be a super strong hero. And along the way, over a period of combats or missions or whatever, they realize that that's not who they are, and they have that cathartic healing moment or something like that. That can be part of the fun. So that covers what are the basics of role-playing, what are the basics of being empathetic, what are the basics of tabletop gaming. Now I'll give you one more thing, and then I'll introduce you to some pieces, some parts of how the game could go. So first, or as a last thing before I introduce you to the various things that could become part of the game, aside from understanding the overall game, how a DM will give you a circumstance that your character then responds to, how to practice empathy for who your character is based on what shows up on the character sheet or who you create them to be. The other part is your interaction with other players. So we've got the DM sets up a scene. Your character responds to the scene, but you're not the only one in the scene. All the other players are too. So one part of cooperative gaming is making sure that you are patient enough to let other people have their character moment or their story moment. When you're sitting around the table with a DM and 3 other people in addition to yourself, that's 5 people at the table. So you don't want to get lost. Like you want to make sure you advocate for your character's role at the table. If other people are taking over or quick to jump in and you're slower to jump in, even if it's not your personality to jump in, maybe it's your personality to advocate for your character, right? Otherwise, if you're the kind of player or kind of person who tends to be more talkative, you want to put yourself in the shoes of the other people around the table. And no one's going to be having fun if you're the one doing all the talking. Kind of like the little kid example I said, where it's like, oh, and then I do this, and and this person does that, and I do that, and then you lose. I win the battle, right? No one wants that kind of character in a cooperative storytelling setting. So what you want to do is give the other players their moment. Give those characters opportunities to have a response, to have their moment in a scene or in a story. And depending on how many players, because some people go crazy and do like 8 players around a table, which is, to me, insane. I have a hard enough time with 3 or 4 players, and I feel like once you get past 4 or 5, even if you've got a really respectful group, it can get really slow-paced, and as levels get higher where everybody's got a lot more possible options on what they can do, say in the middle of combat, sometimes that can just go on very long. So, if you can keep your group small, that's good. If you just have a group of players who loves playing together, they're super patient, they're willing to wait and enjoy the story, you can have more and more players as long as everyone has that mindset. You should try and have that mindset of, I want to make sure everyone around the table gets their chance for their character to do something cool. And the Dungeon Master should be trying to set up situations that way too. If they're a new Dungeon Master, maybe they're just running a module. So then the other players have to work with them to provide space for your voice, or you have to work with them to provide space for those other character voices. So part of collaboration and collaborative storytelling is that everybody gets a part. No one leads the storytelling. There might be a leader of the party based on character type, but that doesn't mean player-wise there should be leaders in the player group, because everyone should get an even amount of space and an even amount of input. And unless there are things that create tension among the characters, or even if there are things that create tension among the characters, there shouldn't be things that create tension among the players. And so you start getting into how do we do this as a team. So you can draw in principles of any other team sport or any other team project you've ever done, whether that was in business or whatever, and think, how can I advocate for my character's role in this moment, and how can I make sure that everybody has fun around the table? Because we can take that as a group responsibility to make sure everyone at the table has fun. That also means if we're taking responsibility for everyone around the table having fun, there are some things we might not do if we know another player is sensitive to that, or we might decide to talk with that player first. So we want to make sure we're being aware of everyone at the table, be responsible for those different things, and be sensitive to the needs or the histories of the other players. So keep that in mind. I'll talk a little more about that in a workshop later this week when I talk about DMs and inclusive playing, how to work discrimination out of your game table for the player's sake, or work discrimination into the game itself for character development. And that's a very fine line and something we have to be very careful about. So let me introduce you to some basics of the gameplay setting. There are a couple different ways you can do a tabletop role-playing game. The easiest way and hardest is theater of the mind. Theater of the mind style role-playing is there are no minis, there's none of this stuff here on the table. You just have the players, the rule books, and a lot of oral description storytelling. The DM says everything with no other little guys or people or crazy critters like this on the table, right? I'll talk about those in a minute. Theater of the mind is the DM describes a scenario, you respond by describing what your character does or acting it out. You can use funny voices if you want, or silly voices, or serious voices, whatever it is we'll talk about. I'll do a little bit of that in a minute. But the theater of the mind model is the easiest because you don't need any other of this stuff. It's cheap, it's easy, you don't have to print out maps. All you have to do is have a character sheet accessible, and then people can kind of show up and play, because you don't need minis, a map, or anything like that. And you can get rule books online or look up rule books as you do. So that's theater of the mind. Then you have the tabletop map scenario. In this case, I have one option, which is this is a gridded gameplay sheet, and it's something that I can use dry erase or wet erase marker on. So I'll use a vis-a-vis wet erase marker sometimes to draw out a map for people to interact with. Maybe it's a dry riverbed. On the back, I also have a larger map. This is a hex setting, so this is a slightly different scale, but this was just a simple, quick map of a very large valley in the middle of a plateau, and there were some caves. And so the players that I was working with had to establish where the cave was and kind of skirt around some bad guys who had taken some bandits who had kind of set up shop in this hidden valley. So you can use a map like this, and if you're going to use a map like that, you can have all these little fun guys. These are called minis. They're to scale, and they're meant to be used for a 1 inch equals 5 feet scale. So I've got tiny little goblins, I've got giant spiders, I've got large Dracoliches, which these are dragons made out of bone that are kind of necromancy oriented and creepy, and then I've got little drakes or dragons, and so all of these are meant to be to scale in comparison to, say, an adventurer. So I might have this little shaman lady fighting a dragon, and you get the sense. Maybe she tames the dragon at some point using animal handling or something like that. So that is one way. And then finally, I also have, there are better ways of doing this. If you have access to a large-scale printer, or if you want to buy maps, you can also print out images on individual sheets and then tape them together, which I've done for my children sometimes, and this is a version of that. So this is inside a cave. Here's the cave wall, here's the cave stairs, that kind of stuff. And in some campaigns, you'll have labels on here. Let me see if I've got a numbered one. So depending on the situation, sometimes there will be labels for different rooms, and then the DM can use that to know what creatures are in that room. Otherwise, you can make it up as you go, and that's just as fun. There are ways to fast generate maps based on either rolling a die, or using playing cards to say whether what that map looks like. So, with that, give me a second. My screen went black, so I need to log back in here. Sorry for interrupting the video for that. Let's make sure it's going to come back on. There. Yeah, you're still recording, hopefully. Looks like it. All right. So we have character sheets. We have theater of the mind. We have either a quick drawn map or a pre-made module map. And you can find find map generators online that are free, and then you can print out those images large scale. If I'm going to print out a map, I'll usually do it. There are better ways, but I'll usually do it in Excel because then I can see where the page breaks are when it does go into print preview. If I'm going to have to do the whole taping method, which is not terrible, and all of it's part of imagining. So it's just there as a prop to aid the experience. There's to aid the immersion, and help you become empathetic for the full situation. So if you are more of a visual person using figurines, or a more kinetic or tactile person rather than an oral person, you can use props like these to help the gameplay experience. And then of course, it helps to have a set of dice. These are a core part of the game, hence my shirt. So you can have a set of dice, or you can use online die rollers, that leads us to the third way that you can play the game. So you can do theater of the mind. You can do physically on the table with props, hand drawing things out or printing them out with with figurines and minis, or you can go online and do something like an online tabletop gaming platform like Roll20, or that sort of thing, where you can put the map on there, people can digitally move their character pieces around, and all that. So those are some of the basics of the game, and basics of tabletop role-playing, some of the core values and how we apply empathy to situations like this. If you want to make the gameplay even cooler, I'm going to bring this down for a minute to talk about how you play a character. Now, there are sometimes people will feel embarrassed around the table doing silly things. And so you can always opt for describing what your character does. That's the easiest way. And this actually is really good just as a general thing. It makes us better at communicating. It's one of the research-based sides of the game, where we learned that role-playing helps us empathize. It also helps us with descriptive language, so that's cool. As a writing instructor, I think that's cool. But I can just say my character pulls out their scabbard with its shiny curved blade and the bejeweled hilt and slices at the giant troll that's twice his size, right? And that's just describing. And if you notice, I didn't just describe, but I also acted out some of that. That can still be immersive, right? Or I can say, my character insults the troll's lumpy green skin. And so you don't actually have to come up with a cool insult. You can just say, my character tries to have a really quippy, sassy comment toward the mayor of a town or the governor of a town, right? So you can describe it. Otherwise, there's always the option of going all out voice acting style. And if you're going to do that, you can use facial expressions, you can use silly voices. Maybe you're a halfling, and your halfling is one of those, maybe it's kind of like one of those like calm, small, talks happy, but not afraid to, threaten. So maybe you do like a Mickey Mouse voice, but you say something intimidating like, I just bet you guys wouldn't want to see the front end of my Warhammer. Or something weird like that. That's silly, I know. But it can be really fun. Maybe you are a large Goliath, and so you're like 8 or 9 feet tall, or something like that, 7, 8 feet tall, and you want to, and you're not very smart, so using a stereotypical thing to model of a Goliath. So maybe part of that is, you're more of a thumping kind of character, and as part of that, and a slow speaking character. So, well, I don't know, guys, I just want to hit something. Is there a bad guy we can hit? I'm tired of sitting around town all the time, right? And so, really gruff, really simple, and kind of, instead of being like precise moves, I'm kind of flopping my hands, or I'm doing kind of meat hook fists, right? As part of characterizing that. And depending on how I feel about the character, or how I think the character would feel about someone else, I can intentionally glare across the table. So that's always fun. Alternatively, maybe you're a goofy little wizard, and you're a chaotic good. So you always do good, but you don't like following other people's rules, and you have a way of incorporating random weird things into conversations or into combat that throw other people off, especially lawful good or lawful evil people, because they're looking for very strict rules of encounter and engagement and stuff like that. So that means you might do some sort of silly fluctuation of voice. Maybe you make yourself sound like an old man or woman. Hell, I don't know what we're doing here, but I'm about to do something crazy, and I have light flash here and lightning here, and here I'm going to cast a firebolt. Pshoo, pshoo. And you say, my character literally makes those sounds with his face, and no magic actually comes out because he's just describing it, right? And so then that can be a moment of humor, and don't judge my silliness. If you want some ideas on how to do voices that are more scientifically oriented, you can go look at some of my videos on linguistics on my YouTube channel, Greg Fields on Writing. But basically, you want to be aware, if you are going to do funny voices, be aware of what happens when you talk real low like this, or when you move the sound to the front of your mouth and you keep your lips pursed while you talk. Or where you move it up into the top of your nose and stuff like that. You can always combine them and change the voice and play with it, because this is weird. So then you move it to the back of your throat and try and add a raspberry sound to it. Or maybe you just want to sound a little more, I don't know, flighty or something. So move the sounds around in your mouth and play with different accents to embody who you think the character is. So as a recap, any tabletop role-playing game is about group storytelling, and it is collaborative more than it is competitive. It can go on as long as you and the other players want to keep it going. It can be an adventure and the lives of these characters that never stop, or you can change out characters along the way. But as you play the game, take time to immerse yourself in who that character is and decide what they feel, think, and how they act or respond to specific environments. So whether you, as you get used to doing that, you may decide to explore the different ways that the game can be played. You may decide to do it in a tabletop format with physical helps, with these kind of tactile manipulatives or whatever, minis. You may decide to just stay theater of the mind. You can play over a Discord channel and just do audio responses to each other and make the rolls and and roll dice at home or on some sort of online platform. But use this moment of character building and gameplay around the table to practice empathy, both for who the character is, so that even if you wouldn't do it a certain way, you are true to that character in that instance. And then if you're sitting around the table, trying to advocate both for your character and for the other players to make sure everybody has fun. So with that, I'm going to stop here, and we'll see you on the next one.